Hey there, welcome to my channel. My name is Kai, also known as the photographer Sinister Suspect. You can find me on Instagram at Sinister Suspect. Today I want to talk to you about how I edit my natural light photos and how I deal with really bizarre lighting conditions. I don't really like using artificial light, so I use just natural light, and it can be really difficult to get a photo right within certain light conditions. This is a shot I edited yesterday and it looks pretty good, but if we compare it to what it used to look like, so this is the before. You can see the highlights are way too overexposed, the shadows are underexposed, and it just looks really dark in general. The contrast is ridiculously large, and it doesn't really look like there's much detail in here. It's not a pleasing image to look at. But when we look at what I brought out of it, I've actually brought a lot of detail out of this image, and that's generally what I go for. The photo I'm gonna be editing today is this photo. Now, this photo is shot under really difficult conditions. First of all, it's really dark inside of this place, so you can see that the exposure of this particular photo is 15 seconds. So you can understand that if I had to use an exposure of 15 seconds, it was pretty dark inside of this place. But you can also see, even though this is my main exposure, my highlights are still clipped. There's no detail in the highlights, and my shadows are also clipped. Now, I'm looking where. I can't really find it that quick, but there are some clipped highlights somewhere, some clipped shadows somewhere. Now, that is because the difference in the dynamic range between the highlights and the shadows is so big, you can't capture that with one photo, at least not with the camera I shot this on. This was shot on the Canon 550D with the Sigma 18-50 lens. Now the composition is a little off, but it looks alright. Now let's get into editing this photo. The thing we have to deal with first is the dynamic range. As you can see, the highlights are completely blown out, and there are some blown out shadows in here. There's not really much detail right here in these shadow areas. You can't really see what's going on there. Right there's not much detail going on. Same for here in the roof. It's really dark. Now, I've also shot 4 more exposures of this exactly the same composition, and 2 of them are underexposed. Now, if I go to the darkest one, it now turns way too dark. If we zoom in right here, which is the main concern, the main highlight that I want to take care of, you can now see that there's actually a little bit of detail in there. So we can bring that out. We can increase that detail if we want with post-processing. And the same goes for the overexposed image. We now have a lot of detail right here in this roof, and you can also see that within this machine we can now actually see quite a lot of detail. We can see all these little pipes back there, and we can see a lot of stuff going on here, which is absolutely awesome. We can see all this stuff down here, this light, and it just makes it a lot more interesting to look at. But obviously the rest of this image is way too overexposed, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to combine these images. So I'm gonna select them and I'm gonna do a photo merge HDR. Now this is gonna bring up the HDR preview window, and it's gonna create the preview of the HDR, which might take a while depending on your computer. On my PC, sometimes it works out fine, sometimes it's a little slower. I guess it depends on the resolution of the photos as well, and how many photos you've shot. I've only got 5 shots right here. So here we have the preview. Now I have auto align turned on, even though this was shot on a tripod. The tripod might have moved just a little bit, and this just takes care of that. Now, I'm not checking the auto tone because I want to you know, I want to keep the tone just like it is now. I want to control the tone and I want to control the natural light myself, which is what this whole video is going to be about. So I'm going to press merge and it's going to create an HDR photo now. It takes a little moment to merge and it's going to give us a new photo right here. So let's wait for that. And there we have our photo. Now note that what Lightroom has done is it has created a DNG file, which is still a raw photo. So this actually stands for digital negative. So we now have a Lightroom's equivalent of a raw photo. Instead of merging the photos together and getting like a 16-bit TIFF file, which you would normally get with HDR programs, you now actually have a HDR photo that, in a way, it doesn't really look like what people normally associate with HDR, but this is actually an HDR photo. This photo has a much bigger dynamic range than the previous photos you saw, even though it looks the same. And that's because all the exposures, all the dynamic range from the previous photos are now combined into this one single photo. So we can actually recover a lot more from it than we would be able from the original photos. If we would have just added the single shot, like the middle exposure, we would not be able to get out as much detail as we can with the current photo. So let's get into the edit. Now, the first thing I always do is enable my lens profile corrections. Now, right now it doesn't find the profile. I don't know why, but this is an older Sigma lens, so I have to go in here and select Sigma, and then suddenly it finds the lens. Now it is taking care of a little bit of distortion. It looks good. Let's go into the basic tab now. Maybe I want to go into the transform first, because there's not, it's not perfect right now. Let's try the level. And the level actually does a pretty good job, I think. Does a pretty good job. Let's take the crop tool and let's see how straight this image really is. I'm looking at this middle beam right here, and the image actually looks pretty straight right now, so I'm pretty happy with this crop, so I'm gonna keep that. Now I don't mind the distortion here. I actually like that little bit of distortion in this image, because I really wanted to show a little bit more of that roof. I do wish I would have stepped back a little bit further, so I had a little bit more of the bottom of this machine, but you know, you gotta do with what you have. So let's go into the editing of this photo. Now, the first step, I'm gonna bring the highlights down, and this is gonna help to bring out detail in that highlight. Now you can see that actually works really well, but we're also losing quite a bit of highlight here in that light streak. So we might have to do something here. Let's just drop the highlights down all the way, and let's erase the shadows all the way. That's most of the time where I start, and you can see we get a really good amount of detail right now. We still have shadows and we still have highlights, but they're not as pronounced. They're a lot more compressed, and you can see in the histogram that we've actually compressed the image down quite a bit. If we compare it, you know, this is the original and we're really compressing it. So we're really squashing that image down. Now, I like this. I might raise the exposure just a bit. I think that looks nice. Let's do a white balance. Let's try an auto white balance. I like that look. It looks nice, but I want to bring it a little bit more towards the blue side. Yeah, I think that looks good. Contrast. I do want to up the contrast quite a bit. And the whites, I'm not too sure. I might just raise the whites a little bit and I'm gonna raise the blacks as well so that we're not clipping the blacks now. There's no clip blacks anymore, and I really like that. I might go in actually again later on to further, you know, further define that, because we might start get a little bit of clipping later on if we further edit this photo. Now for the clarity. I do like a good amount of clarity, but we really need to take care with the clarity on this particular photo. I do like it, so I'm gonna up it to about, let's do about plus 50, which is quite a lot. Let's close this down. Up 50 is quite a lot, but it still tends to look pretty good on this photo, so I don't really mind. Now for the vibrance. I like bringing the vibrance down a little bit. I don't like the saturation too much. I think the vibrance is a much more natural look. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. Next thing to worry about, I think, is I want to emphasize that light beam here a little bit later on, but right now we're going to work on the color, the tone of the image. So I'm going to use the HSL tab. I really like the HSL tab. You can play around with the colors here, and basically what you can do is you can change the colors of the image. So let's say the reds. Now there aren't really that much reds in here. You can see right here on these pipes there's a little bit of rust, so that's a little bit of red. And we can play, and this is pretty subtle, but we can say like the reds, we want them a little bit more red or a little bit more yellow, or orange. I'm just gonna bring them slightly to the red side. The oranges, do I want to have them more red or more yellow? I'm gonna bring them slightly to the orange side, but not too much, just a little bit. Yellows, now there aren't really that much yellows in this photo, a little bit in the roof. Let's just bring those two here as well. Greens, now there are hardly any greens in this photo, so I'm not even gonna bother changing that. Aquas, there isn't that much aqua in this photo, so we can keep that in the center. Now blues, there is quite a lot of blue in this image. As you can see, if we change this, we really change a lot of this image. Now I actually like that a lot. We can also go to the purple side, but I like to bring those a little bit to the blue, to the green side, so it just makes it a slightly bit cooler, and it adds a little bit of a contrast, and that is something I love in my photos, a contrast between the cooler, darker tones and the more warmer highlight tones, which is an effect I really like, and it's also an effect that's being used a lot in movies and stuff like that. So you can see the purple is actually affecting the cooler tones. So let's bring that a little bit more towards the blue side. And the magentas, there isn't that much magenta going on, so I'm just leaving that. Now let's go to the next part, which is the saturation. Here we can affect the saturation of each individual color. Just like we changed the colors now, we can now affect the saturation. So I can up the reds. And you don't want to bring it up too far, because you can see we get some weird bending here, which is not what you want. So you want to bring it down. But we can really, you know, maybe add a little bit of warmth to these pipes. Do the same for the orange. You know, we can play around with that. Maybe bring that down a bit. Actually bring it up. It looks pretty good when we bring it up, actually. Then we also have the yellows. Now it doesn't really do much, so let's bring it up a little bit. Greens, there's not much green in here, so we're gonna leave that as it is. Aquas, you can see there's hardly any aqua in here, so we're gonna leave that as well. Now the blues are really gonna add a cool tone to this image, so I might wanna increase those blues quite a bit. I think that looks nice, actually. And I want to increase the purples a bit as well. not too much, just a little bit. And the magenta, we don't want to do too much with the magenta. So that looks nice. Now we go to the luminance, and the luminance is actually how light or how dark each of these individual color layers is. So these are color channels basically, and you can now affect the luminance of each individual channel. So we can say we want to make the reds darker, and you can see that this is actually something that can help us quite a lot. So the oranges, I really like the oranges to be a little darker. That looks nice. Yellow, let's make them a little bit darker. Green, not much. Aqua, not much. Blue. Now we wanna darken the blues a little bit. And the purples as well. So just with this HSL tab now, I've changed the image quite a bit. We've toned down the warmer tones and we've brought up the cooler tones, especially in the roof, which is really what I was going for. So now I want to go to the next point, and that is split toning. Now split toning is what I do, what I use a lot as well. I want to bring down the vibrance a little bit more, so we get a little bit less color, and then I'm gonna do the split toning. Now the best way to do split toning is to just bring up the saturation a lot, so now we can see the color that we're working with. And I need a color for my highlight, so I want a nice orangey color, something like that. And now I'm gonna raise the saturation on the shadows, and here I want a nice blue color, I think. Something like that maybe. Or go for like a really blue, but I think a more like a turquoise kind of color would be better. So now I wanna bring this up just ever so slightly. So we brought it up to 7, and I'm gonna bring this up. You can see we're adding light to it, but I don't want to bring it up too much. Now right now it's not really showing like it's doing that much, but believe me, we're getting there. It's actually doing quite a lot. And you're gonna be able to see that later on a lot more. We can actually increase this a bit just to emphasize the effect, because I can also play with this balance to get more of the highlights or more of the shadows. I think this looks pretty good. And then we can back it up a little bit so you get less of the blue and less of the red. And you can see now that we're changing the image quite a lot. We're adding a really nice cool tone. Next thing to do is the detail. Now I don't apply any sharpening in Lightroom. Reason for that is that I use a third-party sharpening tool, which is the Nik software sharpener. I absolutely love that one, and gives me a lot better results than Lightroom does. Now the transform tab, we've already done the leveling. I think it looks pretty good. It's pretty straight. Even these horizontal pipes are all pretty straight, so that's pretty good. I'm looking at the roof and it's pretty straight. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. Now for the effects. The vignette. I love vignettes, but I also want to do a vignette in a particular style. I do them usually in the same kind of way. So sometimes I use a really round vignette like this, and I like to really bring it down all the way first so that I can really see the shape of the vignette. And I usually bring the roundness down so that, you know, I get a little bit of that. And then I usually play with the midpoint, and I like to bring the highlights up to 50 so that we get a little bit of those highlights back through the vignette. And then I just bring it down And I usually go to about minus 10 to minus 20. I don't usually do more than that. You can see it's already adding quite a lot. Might wanna bring that midpoint back a little. So that's looking pretty good. Now we can go into the camera calibration, and one thing I like to do is play around with these sliders at the bottom. And I really like what that does. So it really changes the tone of the image, and it really increases that look that we had now as well. So now we can go back into the split toning, and we can actually dial back that blue on the shadows, and we can dial back the orange a little bit, and we can go back into the HSL tab, and we can take the blues and just reduce the blues a little bit, because they're getting a bit too much now, so we want to control them a bit. And let's just look at the before and after. So this is our before and this is our after. We're really adding a nice mood to this image. Now there's one thing I want to do, and that is I want to create a bit more light in here. I want to change the way the lighting looks. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to darken the image. I'm going to make this image quite dark, like about that. So I'm going to bring it down half of a stop, so that now it actually looks underexposed. But now I'm going to do my signature technique, which is kind of like, well, it's not my signature technique because I guess a lot of other people use it as well, but it's the way that, well, creates the shots that I make. It's how I do these shots. So this is quite a lengthy process, so I might have to speed up some parts of this video because we're already at 24 minutes. But believe me, it really pays off if you do it the right way, or if you do it this way. Now there's one thing I want to take care of first. There was a light beam right here in the original photo, and we kind of lost that light beam a little bit, so I want to bring it up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a graduated filter. I'm just going to make that filter a really big one first, and let's just up the exposure like a lot, so that we can really see what we're working with. And I'm going to try to match this line. Which is going to be quite hard, but I want it about that, I think. A little bit more skewed like that. Bring it down. That is about right. And let's bring that exposure down. And we can, we can widen this a little bit if we want. Make it a little bit wider. Just place it right across that edge. Maybe tilt it just a little bit more. Just drop it there. And I'm gonna raise the exposure with one stop. I'm also going to bring the dehaze down with -10. And I'm going to bring the clarity down with -10, I think. Yeah, let's bring the clarity down, and let's bring the exposure up with, yeah, 1 is good enough. We can also add a little bit of blue. So let's drop this to -25. That looks pretty good. So now what I want to do is I want to duplicate this one, and I'm going to place it right here. And now I want to do the exact opposite. So I'm gonna do a +25, which is gonna change the white balance back to what it should be. I'm gonna do a -1 on the exposure. I'm gonna do a +10 on this one, on the clarity. And I'm gonna do a +10 on the dehaze. So now we actually have the exact same thing again as what we had earlier. And I can widen this a little bit and just position this how I want it. And that way we can really emphasize that light beam coming from that window. We are bringing it up here as well, so we might have to deal with something. Let's go into let's go into this one again, and let's select this one, and I'm gonna do a brush. I'm gonna hit erase. I'm just gonna erase it from here. Because we don't want to have the effect applied there. We're really adding emphasis to that light streak now. It might be a little too much, but we might be able to take care of that later. Let's try a half a stop exposure. I think that's gonna look a little bit more natural. Yeah, that's better. But you can see we've really added some emphasis to that light streak, which is great. Now, I want to add emphasis to this image. We've been working on this image for 30 minutes now, and this was the before, and that's the after. So we've already improved this image a lot, but there's a lot more we can do. Something I like to do is emphasize certain parts of the image where there are already highlights. And this is a really lengthy process. Now I'm gonna demonstrate this for you, and then I'm gonna speed up the video so that we're gonna jump from we're basically gonna skip me making the entire selection. But what I do is I take the adjustment brush, and I usually bring the exposure up to 0.5, so half a stop, and then I go into here and let's just add a little bit of color, like that. And then I zoom in to the image, and I like to bring out the navigator and zoom in quite far, and I'm gonna go through this image and I'm just gonna make selections. Now, where I think I want to see a bit more light. So I have a really nice white brush with the feather all the way up, density and flow all the way up as well, and I'm just using the scroll wheel to kind of change the size. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna paint in certain spots. So I think I would like to see a bit more light on this pipe, so I'm just gonna do that. And you can see the red is basically where my selection is, so I can increase that so we can clearly see where my selection is. And I'm gonna do this for pretty much every spot in the photo where I think it needs a little bit more light. Now, you don't have to be super precise, you know, just, you know, don't do stuff like that. You know, if you're trying to highlight this particular beam, don't do that. You don't want to do that, but just be, you know, be gentle. Just do like that. That looks good enough. I might want to have a little bit here. And that one is a little bit off. You can see I've moved it a little bit. I'm doing this with a mouse, by the way. I really need a Wacom tablet, but for now this works. You can also hold shift, which helps to make straight lines, which in this case really helps, as you can see. So I'm just adding some highlight to that particular pipe over here. And I can just continue that all the way down here. And I'm gonna do this for pretty much the entire image. Now, I'm gonna stop talking for a bit now, and I'm gonna see you in a bit when I've done the entire selection. There we go. So I'm now pretty much done with making the mask. This is basically all the places I really want to emphasize the highlights. Some place I actually painted a little bit to create a little bit of a fake highlight, I guess, but it all helps to create the perfect lighting. So now what I want to do is I want to bring that saturation all the way down. And remember that we also did the half a stop increasement, half a stop on the exposure. So this is what we're doing. We're really adding light in specific areas. That actually looks pretty good. I might want to back it down just a touch, but I think that looks really nice. Now, let's see. I want to make certain parts of the image a little bit darker and certain parts a little bit lighter. I'm going to, let's undo this. I'm gonna do a minus 0.5 on the bottom right here. So I'm gonna do about this. That looks about right. Now I'm really making this image much more dark, way too dark actually, but just a moment. Because now I'm going to take the radiant filter, the radial filter, and I'm gonna use the 0.5 exposure trick, and I'm now just gonna do, I'm gonna place filters on positions where I want to have a little bit more light. So the light is coming from here, okay? So I'm going to make a nice wide radial filter, which I'm gonna place here. So that just adds a bit more of that light. And I can try to use the dehaze a little bit. So that really helps to enforce that part of the image. Now let's bring up this part of the image right here. And I'm gonna play around a little bit with these settings. So let's up the exposure about a full stop. And I'm also gonna increase the clarity, which is really gonna bring out the detail in that area of the image. So that looks really good. I'm gonna do the same thing right here, on this part of the image, but it's going to be slightly less. Let's bring that clarity up a little bit. About there looks fine. So I've really brought up that part of the image, and your attention is drawn to that part of the image now as well, which is my main goal. Now the same thing I want to do up here, because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on up here in the roof. So I'm going to do that, and with this one I think I'm going to up the contrast a little bit as well, and then I'm going to up the clarity a bit, so that looks nice. And this image is already becoming quite a lot better now. Let's try a little bit of light here in the bottom. Up the clarity. I'm really forcing your eyes towards that center of the image. I can try to do like one here as well in the light beam. I think that actually looks really good. Let's do that. Yeah, that looks pretty solid. So it starts to become something nice now. I do want to add some emphasis here to the roof, because the roof's becoming quite dark. So I'm going to... let's just make a big filter over here. And let's up the clarity a bit on here as well. And let's raise the shadows a little bit. And raise the blacks. Just a little bit. And I'm going to duplicate this one. And I'm gonna place it right across this side of the roof. But now I'm going to decrease the shadows a little bit, because it's becoming a bit too much. And let's turn the clarity down just a hair. Now I want to increase the light over here in this corner. I don't know why, but that corner of the roof is a lot darker than the rest of the image, so I'm just gonna bring that up slightly. And I might want to go into the brush and take my eraser brush, increase the size a little bit, and just get rid of some of that light right there. So it looks a little bit more natural now. Yeah, let's see. Are there any things that we might be able to increase or do or make better? Let's add some light here. Let's do the same over here. That really helps. Yeah, so that's actually starting to look pretty good. Now there's a trick that I have that I use a lot. If you edited one photo of a specific location that you're really happy with, you can use that photo to compare the photo you're currently editing to see if they're the same editing style. So you need to click this one right here, which is the reference view, and it tells me this. So it says drag and drop a photo from the film strip to the reference photo. So I'm gonna take the photo that I showed you earlier, and I'm gonna drag that right over here. And now we can actually see the two photos side by side. I can see they're pretty similar in terms of colors. They're pretty good. I might want to bring the balance a little bit more towards the warmer side. and I might want to bring down that blue a little bit. Go a little bit more towards the oranges. I think that looks a little bit better. The tone curve, because we are clipping the highlights right, or we are clipping the shadows right now, so I'm gonna create a little dot in here, and I'm just gonna take this black point and I'm just gonna raise it ever so slightly, so we don't have any clipped shadows anymore now. And now I would call this pretty much done. This image looks pretty good. I might have overdone the light beam a little bit, so let's see. Let's bring the dehaze down to -5, and let's go into this one and do a +5, so that's a little bit less. Yeah, that looks better. It's more natural. I really like the look of it. Now let's try and play around a little bit more with this with the adjustment brush, and let's see if we can add some clarity to some parts of the image. I'm going to switch back to the full view, and let's take our brush and let's add a little bit of clarity to some parts of the image. So I want to add a little bit of clarity here. I want to add a little bit of clarity here, not too much because there's already quite a bit of clarity, just a bit. I want to add some clarity here because it's a little dark in this area. Just add some clarity there. Same with this area. Down here, maybe just add a little bit of it. The last stroke wasn't good. I don't want to add too much in the middle, but I do want to add it a bit here on the sides and to there, just bringing out certain parts of that image. Let's see, maybe add a little bit clarity here and some here. So I think I'm pretty happy with this shot. We can really add a lot of the clarity, or just a tiny bit. I'm just gonna do a little bit. And that's it. I'm pretty happy with this shot. If we reference this to the other photos, it's pretty similar in colors. It's slightly different because it's a different photo, but it looks good. Now there's one more step, and that is sharpening. I'm going to be talking about how I sharpen my photos in the next video. I think this is long enough. This video took me an hour to record. I'm now going to edit this video, speed up certain parts so you guys will not have to be able to watch the entire thing. If you guys want to see more photos that I shoot, go to my Instagram, which is @SinisterSuspect. You can also find me on Flickr. I'm working on a website as we speak, so I might have a website soon where I'll post a little bit more information about my gear and about what I do to my photos. Now, if you want to see me do a video about a specific kind of technique, a specific kind of photography style, an editing style, or maybe you want to know my opinion about a specific piece of software, let me know in the comments below and I'll do a video about that. I hope that you liked this video, and yeah, I hope to see you back soon. Also, if you want to see more videos, please let me know by subscribing to this channel. That way you guys will get the latest videos as soon as I upload them. And yeah, I hope you like this video and I hope to see you back soon. Peace.